My name is Haruka, and I am the founder of Planet Education, and I am a virtual coach for college education, college admissions. And today I'm really excited to launch my very first College Knowledge webinar. The topic is college application timelines, checklists. My target audience is sophomores, juniors, and anybody who is a high school parent, and even middle school if you're ambitious. A little housekeeping before we start. If you don't mind putting yourselves on mute so that we don't get any disturbances. And without further ado, let's get started. Here's my agenda. I'll start with a quick intro of myself, and then we will talk about some tips for college application process. And then we'll go month by month and discuss what needs to be done in terms of timelines to stay on track. And I will end with references, some of my top references related to college admissions planning and financial aid to get you started. Okay, so a little bit about me. I am born and raised from New York. I graduated from Cornell University with a major in human development and family studies. I have always loved education. I have been in California for about 20 years. Some of my experiences have been international, and mostly Japan and China. But I've also had some experience working in high tech. Most relevant, I would say, is that I was a Cornell Admissions Ambassador Network chair for Alameda County for about 8 years, in which I had a leadership role in the Alumni Association, and also served as a university freshman admissions reader for the University of California. I bring these experiences to my practice. I launched Planet Education in 2016. I have a small group of clients that I serve as a personal college coach. And this year, I am pleased to launch this webinar series that's called College Knowledge. I'm based in Dublin, but I work with my families both one-on-one as well as virtually. And I look forward to developing a relationship with you. So today, our topic is about getting started and getting all of the ducks in a row. My first step with any family is to build the college list. All right, so I have a sample here with a case study. And let's just suppose that this is your college list that the student has created. You can see that there's some UCs, some CSUs, state schools from outside of California, as well as private schools. Today, I'm not going to talk about building the college list in detail, but I will say that there's a really important formula that I like to use with my families as a starting point. And that is to start with UCs plus CSUs plus tag plus 6. What does this mean? Well, it's part of the process of getting a balanced list, all right? And we want to have a reality check. So when I say UC, I mean the University of California. There are 9 campuses, and you should know that whether you apply to 1 or to 9 campuses, there is 1 UC application. CSU stands for California State University. There are 23 campuses in the state, and they have another application, and that is called Cal State Apply. I always encourage my families to look into TAG. TAG stands for Transfer Admission Guarantee. And this is an amazing program that launched several years ago, where students can start out at a California community college, identify 1 out of 6 UC campuses, and select one out of 21 of the most popular majors for a pathway, and then complete requirements so that you can be guaranteed a seat at a UC. This only applies for the 6 UC campuses, and I will name them. They are UC Davis, UC Santa Barbara, UC Irvine, UC Santa Cruz, Riverside, and Merced. Okay, basically the 3 most selective UCs are not included in the TAG program. And I'll go over TAG on another webinar, but suffice it to say, I really think it's important for our students to have one TAG in the mix as they are preparing their college lists. The application process would start with CCC apply, and that one can be done later. When I say 6, what does that mean? I'm talking about 6 other state schools as well as private colleges or universities. I say 6 schools because we want to make sure that you are balanced. You don't just put all of your eggs in the California basket, because frankly, the UCs are more selective than most families believe. And actually also many of the most selective schools are really harder to get admitted than we think. So when I say 6, I want families to think of, to identify schools that have an admit rate of at least 15%. And these schools can use the Common App or the Coalition App, and sometimes others. If you decide you want to add more schools, as a lot of families do, sometimes they are kind of beyond the reach. You know, there are different ways to figure out whether they are lottery schools. But if you want to do that, that's fine. You know, these most selective schools, like the Ivy League schools, a lot of families want to put in, you know, Stanford, etc. If they're very selective with admit rates of less than 15%, especially if they're less than 10%, I call them lottery schools, even for the most academically strong students. I really caution anybody to have a college list that is too top heavy. If you do, that's fine, but let's make sure that we have 6, you know, the UC, CSU, TAG plus 6, those should be a good number of anchor schools, target schools, and the high target schools. Tip number 2 is to identify what the official deadlines are. Now, deadlines really vary, but you should all know by now that all UCs have the official deadline of November 30th. CSUs also have that same November 30th deadline. TAG, I'm going to leave aside because it is rolling to apply to community colleges, so that there's no rush in that one. What about the other state schools? This varies widely, but most of them are in the January 15th to February 15th window. There are exceptions, so you have to be careful, and especially related to schools that are early action, early decision, or rolling. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. And same with the private schools. The official deadlines will vary from school to school, but mostly they are January 1st to January 15th. And again, you have to be specific in finding out each school's early action, early decision, and rolling deadlines. So let's say we go back to that list and we take a look at the individual deadlines. And you'll see something like University of Washington, November 15th. Ooh, that is like a school that a lot of people are surprised about. And then the November 30th deadlines. And then we have January, a whole bunch. And then we have rolling. So should we just apply chronologically? Is that the best thing? Well, actually, I think that there is a better way, because what you need to do is be wary that, like, you don't want to be doing everything in Thanksgiving break, right? November 30th. November 30th is just going to be too much of a crunch time. And there are other considerations we need to be cognizant of. So my first tip is to set your deadlines. And I tell my students that we really, really, really need to submit each application 2 weeks in advance. 2 weeks in advance. So what does that mean? Let's look at the list again. Each of our deadlines, so the UCs, I say, your deadline is going to be Sunday, November 15th. I always say Sundays as the date just to keep things consistent. Now, if the UC deadline is set for November 15th, we can't do the CSUs at the exact same time. So I'm going to put the CSUs ahead by 1 week. So November 8th. That means that in December, we have time to do the regular decision applications. And we want to make sure that, you have enough time for them. The regular decision applications will, outside of the, we'll be using, for the most part, the common application main essay, and many schools also have supplemental essays. So don't underestimate the amount of time that each of these additional schools can take. How many essays are you going to have? Well, that all depends on how many schools you're applying to. Some schools don't have any supplemental essays, not even the main essay, but many do, and it all depends on the school. It really just depends. You should kind of get an idea for how many you can do, but whatever it is, assume that you're going to be submitting anywhere from 1 to 3 a week. Start out. If you have completed the UCs and the CSUs well before Thanksgiving, you're going to get a head start on these applications during your Thanksgiving holiday. So aim for Sunday, November 29th to submit your first batch of applications, then another batch on the 6th of December, and then another batch on December 13th. Why did I cross out the next week? Well, that's because of finals week. None of the students are going to be focused on college applications. For that whole week, you need to set that aside. And it's really important as well, because you don't want your students to, get their first B- in physics or something like that, because that you have to maintain your GPA, not just work on your applications. You're going to have a bunch of applications before finals week and then some after finals week during the winter holiday. Okay? I caution students who want to apply to like 20 schools and things like that, because you will sacrifice quality for quantity. There's always a fine balance. But what about other considerations? I encourage a lot of families to look into early action. And I get questions about early action and early decision. In a nutshell, early action category, and there are 3: early action 2, restrictive early action. These are all non-binding types of applications where you submit your application early and you hear back from the schools early. You get the decisions back early. Early decision is very similar, except that it is binding. Early decision is used, whether a school uses early action or early decision is very case by case. So you have to look them up. It just depends. But for example, all of the Ivy League schools have early decision as an option and not early action. And then there is rolling decision. What does that mean? It means that the schools accept applications throughout the year. And so you can submit the application whenever you're ready. This means you can submit as early as early October, and you can get the results back, the decisions back, in sometimes a week. And boy, it sure is wonderful for a lot of students to know that they have been admitted somewhere. I really encourage my families to look into rolling decision and early action for those schools to add to their college list. Right? So if you are applying to early action or rolling schools, most of those deadlines are November 1st to November 15th. That means that you have to push back your deadline to October, about October 18th. Remember, the families also have to submit their FAFSA at the same time. The FAFSA is submitted to, along with your very first application. So it's usually going to be in November at the latest. And that means that you also want to work on your common application. I recommend that you get your solid first draft due by September 13th. This is just a summary of the differences in rolling, early action, restricted early action, early decision. You can see that each one has a different application due date and a typical date for which the decisions are received, and then be very careful about whether the decisions are binding or not. Okay, this is actually a really important topic, and I'm going to have another webinar later on about the pros and cons of early action and early decision. So let's get back to our college formula. You have your UCs and CSUs in November, and then in December is going to be your big period for applying to all of the regular decision schools, whether they are state schools or private schools. This is the reason why we need to start early, right? Because you don't want everything to be, compressed into the schedule in November and December. We want to have an early start. And I recommend the summer as the best time to start the UC application. This is a great time to familiarize yourself with the website, understand how you can add your extracurricular activities, awards. You can take a look at all of the personal insight questions. That's what the UCs call the essays. They call them PIQs, personal insight questions. They don't call them essays. And you have a choice of 8. You have to pick 4. Each of them is 350 words. You can brainstorm ideas. And if you're working with me, I recommend that you have 4 solid draft responses due August 16th. I say you want the first solid drafts done before school starts. Before school starts. Because once school starts, you're going to be too busy working on your classes and your extracurricular activities, sports schedules, and so on and so forth. You're not going to be able to focus. We want to get a head start in the summer. But, there are UC essays as well as Common App essays. Why do I insist on starting with the UC essays? Well, it's because the UC essays are shorter. They are actually 4 essays that are each 350 words. And so they kind of create a bit of a mosaic for each student. You can, each of them becomes a good starting point for all future essays. So if you've got those 4 solid UC personal insight questions answered, then I will guarantee one of them can be developed into the Common App essay, which is going to be 650 words. If you have additional supplemental essays, which can be anywhere between 1 additional short essay or like 10 short answers, which is the case with Stanford, or you can have some combination of shorter essays. You'll be able to leverage what you've done for the UC essays for these supplemental essays. Coalition essay is also about 550 words, and the scholarship essays, there are so many different types, but again, leverage those UC personal insight question responses. So August and September is the time in which you want to finalize the college list. You want to run the net price calculators. And if you don't know what a net price calculator is, I'm going to have other webinars related to financial literacy because this is a key part in financial fit. August and September is also when you're going to start requesting letters of recommendation, which is required for some, but not all schools. So fast forward to January, okay? So you've completed most of your applications, and I think once January, early January passes, a lot of students are feeling a sigh of relief. There are some additional essays that are going to be trickling in, particularly honors college applications. This is common for many honors programs. Arizona State University, for example, has the Barrett's Honors College, which is fantastic, considered the gold standard by some, as well as other schools like in Oregon. Many of the private state schools have honors programs and honors colleges, and they will have additional applications, so you want to be mindful of those deadlines. Scholarships, those actually have deadlines throughout the year, but I think that realistically, most of the students don't have time to work on them. Like in the summertime, they're not focused enough to work on those, and then come October, November, and December, they're focused on the actual applications. So they're really not focused on the scholarships. And I think January is a good time to shift gears and take a breather and then look at this outside scholarships. March and early April is when we have the decisions coming in from the schools. The decisions will be either the student is admitted or denied or put on a wait list. I will say that my experience so far is that with the UCs, the wait lists have been tremendous. And I will talk about that on a separate webinar. But in March or April, you will be trying to figure out where you can go. This is your last chance to visit college campuses. Spring break is traditionally a time when most seniors, many students go visiting schools, whether they are far away or local, to really deep dive and make their final decisions. It's also the time when families are going to be reviewing their financial aid packages. Sometimes they're confusing, and sometimes families are surprised and disappointed with the results. But this is a time when you need to make sure that you're picking the schools for the right reasons. You want to always be aware of the balance between academic fit, social fit, and financial fit, right? So, understanding the financial packages is, again, another webinar that I will go deeper into. So when do you need to make a decision? Well, that would be in May. May is the National College Decision Day. It is the day when families are required to put down a statement of intent to register. It's officially called the SIR. And then it is also when you need to send in the money, security deposits for admission as well as housing. The admissions deposit and the housing deposit is actually different. And some schools have such shortages in housing that, like, for example, the UCs, that if you are on a waiting list, you might have to put in a housing deposit to multiple places just to ensure you have a spot, because otherwise, you don't want to be admitted to the school and the campus and then find out you don't have any housing. This can be a concern. I want to encourage all students to take all AP exams because you don't want to get senioritis. I mean, senioritis happens. I mean, people are just like so exhausted but it's really important to complete all the classes that you have stated you're going to complete, that you've decided to take. You don't want to flake out. And you do want to sit in on all of the AP exams. June is when the final high school transcripts need to be sent to your universities. Actually, July 1st is the deadline for the UCs, but it's different from school to school. And I also want to alert students about UC's fine print that when they get the results, the decisions in March, it's actually a provisional offer of admission. They put in this fine print because they still reserve the right to be able to rescind that application in case a student really, bombs the senior year. And by that, I mean getting like a D or an F in a class. So it's, or completing, not sitting in on an AP exam that they said that they would take, things like that. So you really want to make sure you don't get senioritis and finish, cleanly your high school career. August is when you can attend freshman orientation for your college or university. It's a thrilling time for students, so exciting. And for parents, it's thrilling to pay your first bursar bill. That's your, your first bill for tuition, fees, housing, board, all that good stuff. And this is how you start your life as a college freshman. So here it is. I'm going to recap what needs to be done. And I also want to encourage families to use a big wall calendar. I have one in my house, but I think it's really helpful to, have everything listed, at least the big events, because sometimes I've had students accidentally schedule something like their Eagle Scout project on the same weekend as a wedding that mom has to go to, or the family has to go to, or whatever it is. A lot of families, they have a lot of people and a lot of travel, so in order to make sure that you plan accordingly, keep that wall calendar in the kitchen so that everybody stays on track. So at this point, let me summarize the sequence, considering all of the different variables, right? So June and July is when students should start on the UC applications. That means things like completing the profiles, the extracurricular activities, taking a look at all the personal insight questions and getting that started. August is when you want to finalize your college list. August is when you want to complete the first draft of all 4 UC essays. October is when most of the students will be submitting some of their early action, sometimes early decision, sometimes rolling applications. Usually this is their very first Common App application. At the same time, you will be submitting, most families are submitting their FAFSA for the very first time. Next is November. This is a really busy period, but this is when families complete the CSU and the UC applications. I recommend completing the CSU application first because it is a simpler application, and families are like, oh, this is how it's done. I get it. And it's a little bit less intimidating than the UC application. But either case, November is when both of those are really done. And you want to really focus on those, that becomes a focus, especially for the first half of November. December is when you will be working on your regular applications and all of the supplements. Again, the busiest period. January will be a little bit calmer. The worst will be over, but that's when we have the honors college applications, scholarship applications. There'll be a little bit of a dip in activity. Then in March, we will be hearing back from admissions and evaluating those decisions. By May 1st, you'll be completing your, you'll put down your deposits and make your statement for intent to register. And August is when you start your college life. It's a really exciting journey. But as you can see, the busiest period is going to be from when juniors are in their, juniors in January. It's all gearing up for this, this period. I think January through May is a period to help students figure out what kind of requirements they have, do some self-discovery as to what their majors might be, visiting local colleges and universities so you get a feel for what your preferences are in terms of, different types of colleges. Just familiarizing yourself on all of those things are really key so that, it gets busier and busier and more serious as the months go by. I also have a whole bunch of college admissions references for my families. And I want to take a moment to explain them to you. As you know, I was talking about how every school is different, right? You could see how there are some schools with early decision, early action. It says ED1, ED2. There is early action 2. There is something called restrictive early action. So you want to be aware of how you can research all of this. And there's actually a good, a huge document that you can download to get the summary. And if you print it out, it's several pages. It's like 30 something pages long. And I'm going to include last year's grid for your reference. But you can take a look at it so you can see in one place all of the deadlines. Another thing I'm going to share with you in the handouts today is a Common App dictionary, because I think a lot of families get confused about the definitions of like early action, early decision, rolling, and also a lot of the financial aid terms like expected family contribution and FAFSA and CSS profile and all these words. So this is, I've been looking for different, college admissions dictionaries and glossaries, and I think the Common App has a really good one. So I'm including that as a bonus in today's handouts. Another thing I'll be including in today's handouts are, maybe actually, let me see if I can share these things with you. So this is an example of a college planning checklist that the College Board has provided, and you can see in greater detail about what needs to be done. This is the 12th grade version, and they have, you can see what you need to do in the fall, strengthen the college list, complete the FAFSA, speaking to counselors and teachers, and so on. This is what needs to be done in the winter, and this needs to be done in the spring. I like this because, well, College Board is the company that that does administers the SATs. So it does include all of those SAT deadlines as well. Okay. I have here, you can see the 11th grade version as well. And let me show you the Common App Dictionary, which is right here. This is a pretty helpful guide for families. And this is what I was talking about, the deadlines for every single school. Can't see. Oh, hold on. Oh, I see. Okay, let me share this once again. Hang on. Okay, so here is I'm sharing some of the handouts that you will be getting. One, I've been looking for a good college admissions glossary, and this is a great one from the Common App, which is the company that administers the Common App application, that platform. So take a look at this for all of your, just gives you a nice glossary. This is an example. Are you able to see?
Yes, very good.
Okay. Okay, great. So this is what I mean by, this is another great resource by the Common App, and it is a list of, goodness, how many? I mean, it's 37 pages long, as you can see, but every school that is a Common App school will have an early decision 2, early action 2, restricted early action, rolling dates, right? You can see how some schools have some dates and some schools do not. It also tells you how much the application fees are. It'll tell you whether there is a personal essay required, whether there are different supplements like art supplements or writing supplements. They will tell you what the testing policies are, because some schools definitely require tests and others do not. Some schools require the SATs with essays and some schools do not. As a FYI, it's the UCs that requires the SATs with the essay. Most schools do not require the essay. And then whether the schools are requiring recommendation letters. Some require from the teachers, some require from the counselors. So this is an amazing resource that is actually updated every week during August and September, because the schools actually keep changing, believe it or not. So, but for the most part, I think it's important to just print it out maybe once a month, or just take a look and see what schools, what changes them might, what is everything. It's especially important for families that have a lot of schools on their lists. If you only have like a small number of schools, it's sometimes just as easy to look at the individual websites, but this is a great way to get a bird's eye view. And let me quickly show you the checklists for college planning. This one is for 12th grade. We have the fall This is a specific checklists for students, what needs to be done in the fall, what needs to be done in the winter and in the spring. This is, again, the College Board's resource. And I've looked at a lot of resources. I think this one is a really good one, so I'd like to share it with you. I believe in leveraging. You know, why reinvent the wheel, right? When you got good resources right there. But they have these checklists for the 8th for 12th graders, 11th graders, and then another one combination for 9th and 10th graders. Another thing that I've created for you is a FAFSA application checklist. I've summarized what you need to do to get started on your FAFSA, okay? So I think a lot of families are antsy about the FAFSA, and but you know, the FAFSA actually takes just about an hour or two to complete. And if you want to get started, I encourage you to start by creating a FAFSA ID number. You need to create one for the student and one for the parent. If you've got 2 kids in college, you'll need to create separate FAFSA IDs, and you can leverage information. You can use there's something called the what is it? The data retrieval tool, DRT, that can retrieve a lot of your tax information. But basically, this is the checklist of things you need to get the FAFSA completed. You know, this is the actual FAFSA information sheet. You've got social security number, driver's license. These are the tax forms that you need. You'll need the tax forms from the prior year, and other tax information, asset information, and the list of schools that you want to apply to. And you can update them as the months go by. You don't need to have all 10 schools from the get-go. One additional thing I'm including is the actual FAFSA form. So just to give you an idea, it's nothing too intimidating, but this is what it looks like. This is the actual form that you can take a look at what questions are going to be required for the FAFSA form. And I'll go over these things in greater detail at other webinars or other meetings if you decide to work with me. But this will definitely get you started. Okay. So I think that's about it. Those are the financial aid. There's a financial aid checklist, the sample application, all of those will be coming to you. I want to encourage families to join me for this and future College Knowledge webinars. I'm going to be speaking on Thursdays from 4 to 5 p.m. Our upcoming topics will be January 30th, selecting majors and minors. Webinar number 3 on February 6th will be the UC Transfer Admission Guarantee Program. Webinar 4 is on February 13th, talking about UC's holistic admissions review, and there are 14 factors that the UCs look for in high school students. Webinar number 5 will be on February 20th. I'll share 10 tips for visiting campus visits, because those, you know, going to colleges to visit takes time and energy. You want to maximize your time on each campus. Webinar number 6 is on February 27th. I'll talk about the hidden costs of attendance, because college costs a lot of money these days, and it is more than even just the tuition fees, housing, room and board. I'll talk about additional things that can really take students and families off guard. webinar 7 is March 5th. I'll be talking about the 10 tips for net price calculators. If you don't know what a net price calculator, this is a great opportunity to find out and understand how you can get some idea of what kind of money you may be eligible for in terms of need-based aid from the federal government and or institutional aid from the colleges and universities. And finally, webinar number 8 on March 12th is going to be about scholarships and merit aid, because I think a lot of confusion lies, based on not understanding the difference between need-based aid and merit-based aid. And especially for families who don't believe that they are going to be eligible for need-based aid, I think it's important to understand how merit aid works so that you can get, you can position yourself well to get money that is out there. Finally, I want to tell you about my registration process. I'm using Eventbrite, and each webinar is $50 for individual webinars. This is available for anybody. Join me on this and any other webinar. If you'd like to get a discounted rate of $30 per webinar, that you can do that by signing up for the 8 webinar series for $240. That way you can save $160. You can sign up as an early bird 1 week early. You can sign up with a friend and get the discounted rate, or if you're a client, then you can be eligible as well. All webinars are going to be recorded. Handouts will be provided. And so you can take a look at the link below for the 8 webinar series, or just to sign up for the next one, which is webinar number 2. Again, my name is Haruka Yamashita. I'm a virtual coach for college admissions. And I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to helping inspire, motivate, and educate students and families on their college admissions journey. Thank you. I think we have a few minutes left. If you have any questions, you can, I'm happy to answer them. You can either ask a question live or chat. Any questions?
No, I kind of do, but I don't know if I should be talking about this right now, but can I share anyway?
Yeah, this is recorded. So if it's very, let's say specific to, if it's a general question, I welcome it. Sure.
Okay, so I'm already working with Haruka, but so my daughter is mostly interested in those schools that's smaller. But you said that, the best sort of scenario for selecting the college is, selecting UC and CSU. But I was kind of like inclined not to look at those options, but do you think it's still better to look at those as a kind of options in our?
Well, I think that in the beginning, it's important to keep an open mind and open heart when you're looking at schools. The CSUs and the UCs tend to be more affordable than the private schools. And so it depends on the balance, like how much financial strength a family has. And things that can take, considerations are, do you have 1 kid? Do you have 2 kids? Do you have 3 kids, 4 kids? How much have you saved? That type of thing. But it's just one element. That's the formula that I use is a starting point. I still think that some UCs and some CSUs, maybe at least 1 or 2, would probably be helpful in the mix, at least in the beginning. Research it and then run the net price calculators and things like that. And then the list will evolve between now and the summer.
Got it.
Yeah. Any other questions?
If nobody asks, I have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what's the difference between the restricted early action and early action. I never heard of the restricted early action.
Yeah, so restricted early action is actually used only by a small number of schools. Previously, it was Stanford, Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. I believe Georgetown has just been included in that mix. And that means that if you apply to one of those schools, you can't apply early action to other, other private schools. You can still apply to other public schools, but what they don't want is like people to be, you know, applying to too many of those top schools indiscriminately. They really want the students to decide which one of these top schools is really your first choice.
Thank you.
But that's a great question. Early action is something that I really think is a wonderful thing. And I encourage that for most of my families, because it helps, you know, there's nothing like peace of mind for families if they find out early that they've been admitted someplace. And you can find out, you know, in December or sometimes November that you've been admitted someplace, which is fantastic. And there's no, it's not binding. So you don't have to, you can, you know, sometimes the financial aid package comes at a different time from the admissions decision. So the benefit of EA is that you hear back early. Early decision is binding. So you are required to attend the university or college if admitted, regardless of whether you get any financial aid. And so as a result, the early decision is kind of unfair unless you have a lot of financial strength. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for your participation, and I hope to see you for the second webinar next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.